Thank you all for coming and gracing me with your presence. Dr. Tallman, I hope that you enjoy my hard work. So I'll just go ahead and begin. I would say that education is like a bridge to the future. If you build it incorrectly or towards the wrong shore, then you're going to either have no future or an ill one at best. And in the arena of education, there'd be two major combatants, and as we all know, that'd probably be public schooling and homeschooling. And I think that homeschooling has three major presuppositions that at its core and its heart. And that would be that the parents have both the right and the ability to teach their children better than anyone else. That they can modify and be flexible so that they can adapt to children's special needs and interests. And that at the home is the best place to instill worldviews and beliefs like religion or politics is best exemplified there. Whereas public schooling has two major presuppositions. The first and foremost one being that the state has the burden, the responsibility, and even the right to educate the children of America. And that secondly, that they have the experience and the authority, that they have the skill to do so. And I disagree with public schools' presuppositions. As Patricia Graham, who was the dean for Harvard's Graduate School of Education, said that public schooling, especially in a democracy such as ours, needs to have an institutional obligation to instruct the children in skills to learn how to interact with the world in which they live. And this institutional obligation, this authority that they have, gives the public school then control over exactly what happens in it, obviously. And this control is equitable to a responsibility to whatever results come out, good or bad. Everyone, public school or homeschooled alike, both agree that the results that public schooling has come up with are poor results. And because of this, there's only one of two results. Either the authorities that public school loves, their teachers, their doctors, either they're not all that, not hot shots like they say they are, or they saw the bad news coming and they're like, we'll just let the children suffer. I don't really think that there's malice in this case. They didn't want the children to suffer, but because of that leaves it with the poor authority. I believe that they did have a very misinformed view of their skill. I look at it kind of like a fisherman. If someone says that he's a really good fisherman and it goes on a week-long vacation to some famous lake where there's big bass, and the entire week he didn't catch a single fish, you can't really blame it at that point on luck or fate. It's got to be his lack of skill. I would equate that to public schooling of today. Besides the argument for authority that they hold in their hands the burden to educate the children of America. Unfortunately for this, when the state takes up a burden, they start to fashion the people in a sense, especially when it's education. The people, as you can look into our Constitution or other documents, it's clear that the people make the state. It's not the state that makes the people. And because of that, we get into some really big problems. In 1861, an Italian, Massimo di Azeglio, said when they finally made Italy, he said, "Now we have made Italy, we must make Italians." And what he was talking about was they were making a public education system for Italians. They wanted to fashion what an Italian looked like, how he thought, how he spoke, what he did. I would say that we are in a similar situation where the government has control of public schooling and over millions and millions of minds, raising them up, are able to influence how they speak and why they do the things they do. And that goes into politics or worldviews or what have you. Like a man who would build his own house, so a government would build the people if they have the power to educate them. One example of this would be when you've gathered a burden all in one place. When you have, like in economics, if you were to have a centrally planned economy, that would be a burden gathered in one place, and we've seen centrally planned economies fail time and time again. In a similar fashion, when you put the burden on the state completely for education, it's going to ultimately fail because it can't deal with it. So not only can the state not even handle the burden that they want to put on themselves, but they shouldn't. Now, a supporter of the public school movement and of the presuppositions that I have stated would obviously disagree with what I've said, but this is why. This is what they would say. They would say that the public school doesn't indeed carry the full burden, that they share the burden with the parents and the children. Obviously, if the child doesn't want to succeed, he's not going to. But the problem is, if the burden, if the responsibility is shared among other people, then so does the power be shared. So does the responsibility for choosing what happens. And we can look at a lot of the state laws on this issue, and we can see that there's just way too much red tape. It's too hard for parents or children to choose if they want to switch schools or do anything different than public schooling. And because of that, I would argue that the power isn't shared along with the responsibility that they claim to share. And because of that, they have most of the power and therefore most of the responsibility in this issue. Another objection to my arguments would be that we live in an imperfect world. Hey, bad things happen. It's not going to be completely our fault if we don't control good grades and things like that. I mean, it's just inevitable. This would be a really good objection if their problem with public schools had been recent and new, if they had just started to begin a trend of failing and of losing in competitions in international affairs. But it's not a new problem. And because of that time frame, I would have to still maintain that they have a very poor authority. Because of these things, I have to reasonably conclude that public schools are building a bridge to ultimate failure. The future of a great majority of students today is going to be one of a poor one. Because of these things, I want to propose two solutions, two cures to this problem. First and foremost, that the red tape be removed, make it easy for parents and children to decide exactly what it is they want to do. And secondly, for if you don't want your child in public school to be put into a private school or homeschool, you don't have to pay the taxes for the public school. And that would essentially privatize public schooling and put them directly accountable with the parents. Finally, as H.G. Wells said, we were making the future, and none of us stopped to consider what future we were making. And here it is.